All right, my friend, picture this. You're in a meeting. Someone says something that's not quite right. Maybe it's incomplete. Maybe it's misleading. Maybe it's just missing something important that you can clearly see. The words are right there, but maybe you don't know exactly how you'd say it. So you hesitate. And then something stops you. A half a second of, how can I best say this? Or what if it doesn't come out right? Hmm, maybe this isn't the time. The moment passes. Someone else says something. The meeting moves on. You ever been there? I think I lived my corporate career there. So you drive home or walk to your kitchen if you work from home and you're still thinking about it. The meeting's long over. Well, see, that's not a big decision. That's not a life-changing moment. It's just a Tuesday meeting. Yet it happens more than you think. The workout that didn't happen because the alarm went off and something said, not today. The person you almost complimented, but didn't. The smile you almost gave the person who was rude to you because you choose to respond with dignity. Until, well, you didn't respond at all. These aren't the decisions you'd put on a pro-con list, but they're the pattern running in real time, dozens of times a day, and they're all coming from the same place. What might this look like in morning? Alarm goes off. You had a plan. Gym, early start, get ahead of the day. And something in you says, not today. I mean, no reason, just not today. You roll over, pick up your phone, and the day starts on someone else's terms. Or you get to work. There's a conversation you've been meaning to have. Maybe it's with your manager about your workload. Maybe it's with a coworker about them crossing a line. Maybe it's with a friend who owes you money and hasn't mentioned it in 3 months. You know what you'd say because, well, you've rehearsed it. You might have even typed it out and deleted it. But the moment comes and goes again. At lunch, someone asks your opinion on something and you soften it, not because you're wrong, because you don't want the friction. You say, oh, that's interesting. When what you really want to say is, that won't work. And then there's the afternoon. You get an email that bothers you, tones off. You start drafting a response. It's very clear and direct, very reasonable. And then you delete it. Write something safer, shorter. The version that, well, won't make anyone comfortable and also won't make a difference. Then there's the evening. You're home. Someone asks how your day was. The answer, of course, is fine. Because explaining what actually happened would mean naming the thing you didn't do or didn't want. And that's harder than just saying, fine. None of these are the kind of thing you'd lose sleep over individually. But stack them up day after day, week after week. And at some point, you're going to look around and wonder why you feel stuck, why you feel smaller than you know that you are, why there's this gap between who you are in your head and how you show up in the room. It's not one decision that created that gap. It's 100 small ones you stopped noticing. Do you remember Sarah in course number 2? 6 months on one job decision, spreadsheets, pluses and minuses lists, pros and cons, and at some point the spreadsheet, I think, had its own spreadsheet. But even Sarah's freeze didn't start with the job offer. It started with the small stuff. The emails she couldn't send without checking with someone first. The opinions she softened before they left her mouth. The daily pattern of deferring to everyone else's judgment before trusting her own. The job offer was just where the pattern got loud enough to notice. The small freeze is where the pattern lives. The big freeze is just where it gets your attention. So what's actually happening in those moments? Your brain runs a quick calculation every time you're about to do something. Speak up, set a boundary, say what you think. Take the action you plan to take. The calculation asks, does this matter enough to act on, given what I care about? When the inputs are clean, when your thinking is clear, the calculation produces a nice signal. Green light, and you move. Or red light, and you stop. But when there's a bias in the thinking layer, a distortion in how your brain is balancing or weighing things, the calculation produces noise, conflict, instead of a clear signal. One of the most common versions of this, and one of the most visible, is when the brain overvalues or overweights how other people will respond to what you're about to do. So in that meeting, the calculation isn't, is this worth saying? It's, what will they think of me if I say it? At the alarm for the gym, it's not, do I want to go? It's, what if I go and it's not a good workout, or I feel worse and I could have slept more? Or in the email, it's not, is this a response that's going to add value? It's, will this make them uncomfortable? Will they think I'm just being a jerk or being difficult? Every one of those is the same pattern. The brain is asking the wrong question. Not, what do I actually want, or what can I actually produce and do here? But what's the safest thing to do given how other people might react or respond? And since you can never fully predict how other people will react, the answer is always the same. Don't. That's why it happens so fast. That half second in the meeting, that wasn't you thinking it through. That was the calculation and valuation running and returning the same answer it always returns. Don't. Not now. Not worth the risk. And here's what makes this particular pattern so hard to catch. In the moment, it feels like wisdom. It feels like discretion. It feels like being thoughtful, being considerate, and reading the room, which is a really elegant trick. Your brain has found a way to make self-protection look like emotional intelligence. But the cost, my friend, it compounds. Every time the freeze wins, it gets a little easier to freeze next time. The muscle for speaking up, setting the boundary, trusting your own judgment, that muscle doesn't just stay the same, it atrophies. And then the pattern reinforces itself. Because the one that keeps you quiet is the muscle that's getting stronger. And eventually you end up somewhere you didn't choose, not because of one bad decision, but because of 1,000 small non-decisions that all ran through the same distorted, biased filter. Your report shows you where that filter is, not as a personality label, not as you're indecisive or you're conflict avoidant. It shows you the specific bias in the calculation, the exact point where the signal gets noisy and it gets interrupted. It's a completely different approach. It's a different thing. I work with someone who's successful, really good at what they do. Business is solid. Clients getting results, referrals coming in. They have a goal of that they're really serious about. It's about a revenue level that's going to allow them to do the things they wanted. And they wanted to hit it and stay there. They did hit it. They'd actually gotten there once. Then they watched it slide back. And they couldn't figure out why, because it wasn't one bad decision. It wasn't a market problem, a strategy problem. On paper, everything should have been working. When we started looking at the day-to-day, the small stuff, a pattern showed up. They had a client who had to stop paying, didn't end the engagement, They had another client going through a rough stretch, and they waived the invoice. A third, and then a fourth. Each time, there was a reason, a really good one. Listen, they're going through something. Their son is struggling with a medical condition. It's not the right time to push. I told them I'd always be there for them. Every single one of those was a small freeze, a moment where they could have set the boundary, had the conversation, adjusted the terms, and said, this isn't working for either of us because you're not getting the results. But they didn't. Not once. Over and over. Month after month. After hitting their goal, they couldn't sustain it. And these things happen all throughout our lives. Each individual moment felt too small to make a thing of. What kind of person pulls support from someone who's struggling? When we added it up, it was almost $10,000 a month. Not lost, but spent. They were paying $10,000 a month to avoid 4 conversations. The whole time, they were frustrated about not being where they were supposed to be. And that word kept coming up, supposed to. I'm supposed to be further along. I should be at this level by now. I should have these things. But the small decisions they were making every month, the ones that didn't feel like decisions, were the exact thing keeping them there. When we mapped out the VQ pattern, it showed up very clearly. The question their brain was answering in those moments wasn't what's right or what creates the most value here. It was, what kind of person would I be if I didn't stay? It's not a business problem. It's a thinking pattern. And it was running underneath every one of those small freezes, invisible, because no single moment felt like the moment. Once he could see the pattern, see which question actually driving those choices, the conversations started happening. Not all at once, but they started. The first conversation was with himself. And not because they became a different person, but because they could finally see what they'd been deciding and how it was not just impacting their lives and the clients' lives, but many more. Now, if any of that felt familiar, not the business part, but the pattern part, the private VQMe call is where we map exactly which calculation is running in your brain in your small moments, not the general version, your pattern, your situation, 20 minutes. Remember the links. Now, one thing before you go. The small freeze doesn't feel like a problem. That's what makes it a problem. It feels like being careful, being considerate, as I mentioned before, reading the room. And any one of those moments, that's probably fine. But the pattern, the 1,000 small versions of don't running underneath everything, that's what creates the gap between who you are and how you show up. And that pattern is already in your report, not as a label, but as a "you are here" sticker on a map. And once you see which question your brain keeps answering, you can start asking a different one. The next lesson is one that tends to catch some people off guard. What happens when your brain fights the things you actually want? When something in you keeps saying, not yet, or, oh, you know what, you need to figure this out first. And then the want just quietly gets quieter, goes back in the drawer somewhere. Now, if that landed anywhere, the link's below. Before you go, what's one small moment you froze on today? Small, not a big thing, just that simple Tuesday stuff. You don't have to explain it. You don't, just name it, give it a little label, and write it below. You're going to be helping yourself out as well as someone else here in the community. See you in the next lesson.